For more analysis on this all, then, we're going to speak to our international affairs editor, Leila Jacinto, who joins me now on set. Hi, Leila.
Hi.
So about 76% of the world's population recognizes the existence of a Palestinian state. So how do you expect the world, the international community, to react to these announcements?
You know, the hand of history overlooks what's happened right now. And there are many people across the world who are acutely aware of this hand of history. As you said, more than 150 out of the UN General Assembly's 193 countries recognize the state of Palestine. So in a way, these are, critical Western countries joining the rest of the international community. But the reason why the British recognition in particular will have resonance across many parts of the world is because they are acutely aware of the history behind this. And this is not a history that goes back just to the 1993 Oslo Accords. This is a history that goes back more than a century, when in 1917 there was the Balfour Declaration, whereby colonial Britain gave a declaration of the understanding of a homeland for the Jewish population. The Balfour Declaration, of course, said that it should not in any way prejudice against the existing other communities in Palestine. So in a way, what we are seeing now is London recognizing Palestine, which was recognized more than 100 years ago, right? And don't forget that this is also being spearheaded. This entire move to recognize the Palestinian state is being spearheaded by France. Now, it was France and Britain that split the Levant, which was an Ottoman Empire, a year before the Balfour Declaration, when they had the Sykes-Picot Agreement in 1916. And the Levant was divided into a British interest, and France got Lebanon and Syria. And none of these regions has seen peace and security. As we speak now, Israel continues its operation in southern Lebanon, and in Syria, since the fall of Bashar al-Assad, Israel has been bombing parts of Syria. So for the international community, history has overlooked this. On the one hand, there's the history of, and in a way, it's almost a matter of two parallel histories being told, right? Because the state of Israel was created after the horrors of the Holocaust, and for the people who were formerly colonized, they look at this land and ask what about Palestinian self-determination, which is one of the founding principles of the post-World War order of the UN Charter. So in a way, this is very symbolic. Nothing changes on the ground. I mean, bear in mind that Prime Minister Keir Starmer had the statement, which we all were waiting for, but it was very short on any details, right? You are recognizing a Palestinian state. Well, what are the land borders? Does Israel agree to a land border? So it's symbolic. For much of the rest of the world, it is still another reminder of what is perceived with the majority of people as the double standards on this issue. But, for people who have been part of former empires, whether it was the British Empire or the French Empire, they really look at this issue as a continuation of a long history.
What do you think? I mean, we heard from Catherine Norris-Trent in the West Bank earlier in Ramallah. How do you expect Palestinians to react, perhaps especially those in the Gaza Strip, which, of course, will have made clear that this announcement has not stopped Israel from pushing forward with the war? So what does this mean for them concretely?
I mean, Palestinian reaction is different, of course, right? Because not all Palestinians think alike at all. Obviously, officially, the Palestinian Authority has welcomed this move. There is, without any question, that most Palestinians view this as a distraction, that all the talk that is happening in London, Paris, and New York is very far removed from very existential issues of survival that Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank are trying to achieve. So for Palestinians, they see a lot of this as almost a distraction from what is happening, because we are going back. We are having leaders recognize the Palestinian state and talk about the viability of the two-state solution, right? The two-state solution is more than 3 decades old. As far as Palestinians are concerned, the Palestinian Authority signed. It was the leader Yasser Arafat who signed onto the two-state solution. And what we are seeing right now, since the Gaza war erupted 2 years ago, is the most explicit statement ever by Israeli leaders that they will never, ever recognize the state of Palestine. So in terms of reality, for Palestinians, this is really nothing. They view this as Western leaders trying to look good.
It's perhaps not insignificant in that sense that Mahmoud Abbas will not actually be present at the UN General Assembly this week because his visa was denied. He will, of course, address the assembly by video link. So what do you expect then to happen next?
Well, what we will see next is on Monday in New York at the UN General Assembly, that Macron and, so this is France and Saudi Arabia, are co-hosting this much-announced meeting where France will recognize the state of Palestine. The fact that Saudi Arabia is included in this meeting is a sort of a shout-out to some involvement of the regional Arab players in this conflict. So that's what's happening on Monday. What London, Paris, Australia and Canada are looking for in the short term is what is going to be Israel's reaction to this. Very few people foresee a cutting of diplomatic ties, of course. A lot of people foresee, experts, foresee that there will be very mild reactions in Western capitals to whatever the immediate steps that Israel will take. And for the most, this issue is very likely to dominate the UN General Assembly, where 193 members of the international community meet and now have very significant countries and powers on their side. I mean, bear in mind that, with the UK recognizing the state of Palestine, it's the first member of the G7, the group of 7 countries that recognizes it. Now we have Australia and Canada, France on board as well. So the only countries in the G7 that do not recognize the state of Palestine so far are the US, Germany, and Japan and Italy, right? So increasingly we are seeing the world turn on this, but we are seeing this huge schism between words and reality on the ground.
Leila Jacinto, thank you very much.